Hello, everybody, and welcome to, I guess we're calling this Let's Remember. And this is Skies of Arcadia. It is my favorite game of all time. It is a JRPG for the Dreamcast, came out in the year 2000. I was relatively young when it came out, so there is some nostalgia at play here, but I really want to sit back and look at this game and hopefully explain to you why I think it's so wonderful. For starters, let's just listen to some of that opening music here at the title screen. It's absolutely awesome. The tone of this game is set very quickly right here on the title screen. The music is gorgeous, and we're going to get started. This game is phenomenal in so many ways, and I really, really hope that you'll follow me along for this entire video. It shouldn't be much longer than about 30 to 35 minutes, because we're just going to go over the opening sequence. And so we start off right away, and it's a very simple sort of visual shorthand for things that are going on here. This is the Star Destroyer chasing the Rebel cruiser at the beginning of A New Hope, right? This game, when I talk about it, I'm going to say a lot of words like genuine and honest and authentic. And when I say that, I mean that this game just doesn't have any pretensions in terms of what it really is doing. This is a game about sky pirates going up against the evil empire, and that's exactly what we're going to get. It plays a lot of tropes very genuinely, very, close to the chest. And I think, honestly, there's a lot of power that comes from the enthusiasm that the game just sort of plays everything out very, just plays it very straight. There's not a lot of attempts at subversion or all these other things that you might expect from an RPG at the time. This is a game that just wants to be about an adventure, although it does have a lot of things to say about colonialism and, wealth inequality and aristocracies and things like that. That's all buried underneath the surface, underneath this really big swashbuckling tale about heroes fighting the bad guys over magical crystal MacGuffins. And it is the honesty and sort of lack of pretense in this game that I really, really enjoy so much, and we'll get a good chance to really see that right now when we encounter our heroes. Obviously, this is our bad guy, a sort of sneering aristocrat, and we're going to see the good guys here in a minute. And imagine just this at the time it was such a fresh, a breath of fresh air, because it really just was so honest about what it is. So here we go again. And so this game immediately jumps into this really sweeping, strong feeling of adventure and excitement, and good guys fighting the evil empire and all of these things, and it's really refreshing and really wonderful. This is Vise. He's going to be our main protagonist, and just his dialogue already shows how clear-cut everything is in this game. I'm Vise of the Blue Rogues, and in a few minutes I'll be relieving you of all your valuables. It's right there, plain as day. Here are the pirates, they're coming to rob the bad guys, and that's how it's gonna go. And the music is just fun and exciting, and the game is bright and colorful. Even right now on the deck of the ship, it's wonderful. This is Aika, she's another one of our characters. Ignore the strange artifacting that's going on with her hair right now. That is not supposed to be happening, clearly. But see, we have this sweeping shot, the camera's panning around in a circle of our two heroes back to back, about to fight the soldiers of the Empire. And there's something very arousing and exciting about that. And we jump into combat. I'm not going to really explain combat until our second encounter, so for now we're just going to see it in action, and you'll sort of catch on. It's not anything complicated. As much as this game also plays a lot of story tropes very straight, it doesn't really do a lot of crazy things with its mechanics. What it does do is it takes those tropes and those mechanics and sort of polishes them to a very sort of bright, shining glisten, where everything just seems, on an individual examination to be fairly basic, but when the whole picture is taken into consideration, it becomes a lot more exciting and vibrant and just flat out wonderful. This is a wonderful game. It always pushes you forward. There's always a drive to move forward. There's always an optimism. Like our two heroes right here are young and youthful, and they don't have a lot of baggage or anything. They're going on a quest and all sorts of fun stuff. And we even have little moments like this. So the Valuan soldier's like, "What do you think the two of you could do against the five of us?" And then good old Captain Dine shows up. It's actually Vize's dad. But I like that the secondary characters sort of have fun designs to them and get sort of their little moments in the sunlight too. Everything about this game, even the side characters, stand out and have moments where you really root for them or sort of are impressed by them. And in this case, it's just right. We have, once again, heroes versus good guys, and we're setting it up. Or not heroes versus good guys, heroes versus bad guys, and we're setting it up so clearly. And there's an honesty to it that's absolutely enrapturing. So we'll open this chest. Got a healing item, and we're going to move through the ship. The game starts you off in a very exciting sort of scenario, right? Hijacking a ship, robbing things, an act of piracy, but that's not like a violent act of piracy necessarily. I mean, obviously we're killing the bad guys, but I mean, it's not like we're raiding a port town or something. We know who the good guys are. We know who the bad guys are. This is Alfonso. He's the bad guy. He's, everything a pompous aristocrat should be when you're thinking about that trope, Lowlives such as yourselves have never had the opportunity to bask in such greatness. That sort of, and he's such a snob. It's wonderful. And a lot of the characters that we encounter will fall under certain archetypal qualities, and then later on the game will start to mess around with those archetypes and play with them, and not completely subvert them, but turn them into something to kind of be intimidated by. Not with Alfonso, but with other sort of villains that we have in the game. They are a lot more effective. In fact, the main villain of this game and his subordinate are possibly two of my favorite villains in any game ever, especially in any JRPG. Dispose of them. And we have little touches like the voice acting there, which is ridiculous, but it gives each character a little bit of charm. Alfonso has these sweeping gestures. We'll talk a little bit about how things are animated in a bit. For now, let's talk about the combat system in earnest. So, Skies of Arcadia doesn't really reinvent the wheel, but it does do some things that I think are really nice. One is you can switch out the color of your weapon's moonstone at any time, and that will give you sort of like an elemental rock, paper, scissors advantage. And then depending on what you have equipped that's the type of experience you earn towards that certain type of magic at the end of combat. So red is like fire magic and offensive spells and party buffs. Green is like healing and stuff like that. Very simple stuff. Later on, purple will be like status effects and ice. Very easy to understand. And so we have all these options, and you'll see at the top of the screen we have a bar that says 2 out of 8. That's our special meter, where if we have enough, we can use our special attacks. To boost that, we can actually forego action during a turn, and we'll do it here on both of them, to focus. And they just sort of charge up that special energy. And that energy builds up even if you're not using focus. Like, I could just be attacking these guys, and I'll generate some points that I will eventually be able to spend towards special attacks, but it's not a thing where like everything's tied to MP or something like that. There's magic points in this game, but they're used for magic. SP is this sort of continually regenerating resource that you can make the choice to sort of forego an action in order to generate at a faster rate. And that sort of calculation becomes important during boss fights, and can make boss fights a little more tactical than just your standard combat system, even though as a whole the combat system here isn't anything really too complex. But now we have enough for a special move, so we're going to use Cutlass Fury. And remember, this is just one of our starting special moves. But look how cool that is. Look how exciting it is. All of the special attacks in this, even ones that are as simple as like casting a protective spell on your team, all have this really exciting energy to them. This game is full of energy and full of life, and the characters are so joyful, and there's a real joie de vivre that I find in this game that I can't say I've found anywhere else. And actually, we're going to try and run around and get into another encounter just to have a little bit of an advantage going into this next boss fight. So we'll run for a minute. Come on, encounter, encounter go, encounter go. Nah, we'll keep on going, never mind. Skies of Arcadia tends to have a high encounter rate. It's one of the most glaring problems with the game. It's something that was addressed in the GameCube re-release, Skies of Arcadia Legends, which, if you have a chance between playing Legends or playing the Dreamcast version, play Legends just because it has the extra content. But in terms of showing off a game that has a lot of flaws and wears them on its sleeve very proudly, this is a good example of it. So encounter rate in Skies of Arcadia is very high. And you might be tempted to sit back and say that, well, okay, that's a really terrible thing, and it can be an annoyance, but at the same time, this game doesn't really, like, there's something about having all of those flaws readily apparent and having sort of these weaknesses very clear. The fact that the game is fairly trite, the notion that the game might have too much RNG when it comes to its encounters or things like that. It's something that makes the game really feel like it was made by a team of people, as opposed to just like this big corporate entity. Even though this is like first-party Sega, it exudes just a certain amount of charm and authenticity, not only in the flaws that it has, but also just in like the art style and sort of the story that's being told. We're going to heal up because we have a boss fight coming up. So I think we have enough items where we don't need to use any of our magic. Awesome. And here we go again. And like I said, the opening scenario is very exciting. Moving into the ship and attacking and robbing the bad guys. Alfonso's behind this door. Antonio's the boss we're going to have to fight. And there's a clear divide, and I don't mean like literally with the door. I mean like between like the type of characters that Vise and Aika are, as opposed to someone like Alfonso. Alfonso is this sneering sort of, you'll never get me. Like, there's nothing wrong with that type of villainy. It can be really fun. And our heroes are very earnest. And look at this, just climbing around on the outside of this ship is really exciting in its own way. It's so strange to me that Sega never really followed up with this setting, because even this notion of boarding ships and doing all these things, it's so exciting and so refreshing. And I wish that they had followed up on this, because I can imagine that a modern take on this, with more resources and proper art direction, could be really exciting. Later on in the game, there are ship-to-ship battles when you own your own pirate ship, and those are really some of the highlights of the game, and I want to hopefully get to one of those at some point. I'm not sure if I'll play through all of this or not. Right now, this is just a one-off video to show sort of the opening of Skies of Arcadia and what I love about it. If you're interested in seeing more of this game, or even seeing a proper playthrough, just like the video, or like leave a comment or something, and we'll totally move forward. This is the most outright villainous that Alfonso ever gets. Not that I'm here to really analyze the plot of Skies of Arcadia. He's going to kill his lieutenant and say that his lieutenant was a spy in order to avoid any issues with the Empress, and he'll say that he was betrayed and that's why he lost his ship. Later on, Alfonso isn't quite as villainous, because that is sort of supplanted by like the real true villains, but for now there's this nice notion of sneering imperialist or like pompous aristocrat, which really plays into this sort of divide between, you know, the pirates, the blue rogues, and the value in empire. And look at these animations here, like the facial animations. You can see, like, they're very vibrant. So Vise has a clear anger towards the notion of somebody being killed in cold blood like that. And you'll see here that Alfonso does this really, like, smirk right here. Look at that. That's so great. And it's the resources, you know, this is right at the turn of the century, right? This is the Dreamcast came out in '99. And so it's not a remarkably robust machine, but it actually can do quite a lot of things. And in Skies of Arcadia, small things are done to add up to a big effect. So it's a combination of like music, and then like small little facial quirks, and just a general sense of scale that really makes this game sort of stand out. And at the time, man, was it really exciting to see. Not just in terms of what it meant for this game, sort of taking RPGs, and in this, I really think that Skies of Arcadia, one of the reasons I love it so much is that it occurred at a time where there was a lot of, or there appeared to be a lot of deconstruction or sort of self-examination when it came to the JRPG form, and Skies of Arcadia sort of said like, well, the form's okay, let's tell a very honest story and just have everything work. And it did. It plays everything so straight and so honestly that it really ends up working very, very well. So this boss fight, very simple boss fight, obviously because it's the first one. We'll want to pay attention to the music later on, because it actually changes dynamically depending on how well or how poorly you're doing in the battle. If you're doing well, it will shift to something really exciting. If you're doing poorly, it will shift to something suitably dreadful. I want to add that I also think that the battle system here is neat because it uses camera angles so well. And then also, when there are multiple enemies on the field, like, your characters never stay particularly static. Here, there's only one enemy, so they're sort of finding their positions and staying to them. But when we were fighting all of those soldiers before, like, people were fighting in the background when it wasn't their turn and stuff. The battlefields feel very alive during combat, which I think is fantastic. And it really, at least at the time for me, it made this game feel like something so great because it wasn't just people standing in two lines facing each other, like hacking back and forth. There was actually some sort of activity and motion to the combat. And now we can finally use Cutlass Fury. And to be safe, we'll actually heal. Oh, I don't have enough MP right now. I was going to heal Vise. Instead, I'll take that critical hit. I have no problem with that. The special attacks in this game really capture that sense of sort of epicness. All sorts of excitement happening, and the music has changed. So that's really awesome too. Whenever you're doing well, there's always a drive in this game to push the player forward, to really edge them along the path to being a hero. And this story is just purely about heroes and bad guys and doing the right thing. And it's a story that's about how good people can be and how they stand up to evil. And there's such an honesty and almost a naivete to that I really enjoy. It's really amazing. And so Ica might have just got knocked out, unfortunately. But we should be able to get Antonio right here. I like that the monster's name is Antonio, too. Valua tends to have or Valua, or however you want to pronounce it, has a Spanish influence. Every sort of continent has its own sort of stand-in, so Valua is the Spanish Empire, and later on we're going to find, like, pre-colonial North America and a couple of other things. Vice got all the experience there because, unfortunately, if a character is knocked unconscious, they don't get experience at the end of the match. All of the experience is accumulated towards the remaining members of the party. Which is actually a design thing that I don't know if I fully enjoy, because it can lead to some amount of disparity between your characters, but it doesn't happen too often, so it's not that big of a deal. Just note the colors on these characters and their costumes, right? It's very bright. It's very nice. The character design is wonderful. If the music is full of energy, then the game is also similarly vibrant and honest and just really pure. Because now we have another trope that's being played fairly straightforward. It's sort of the mysterious magical girl and sort of the quest that she's going to go on. It's sort of a Lucia from Lunar 2 type thing. Or like one of many other JRPGs, but you know what I mean. And you would think that all those tropes, like I said, would be a problem, but the thing is that it takes all of those things and plays them with such raw honesty that even if you sit back and look at the plot and say, like, oh, this is really trite, that triteness doesn't matter because the characters that you're experiencing these things with are so wonderful to be with. These are characters I want to spend so much time with. Like, look at this. The game goes to such lengths to establish how much character and how expressive they are. These characters are so expressive and wonderful. Vice and Ica are these fundamentally wonderful, strong people. Fina, that's the girl here. She is very shy at first because she's not from around here, mysterious girl that she is. But she ends up being very kind and ends up being incredibly brave. And all the characters in this game are brave and kind and nice. And there's not a lot of crazy baggage that's going on. They're just good people. And it's really nice to have a party in an RPG where you don't have to deal with a lot of, like, the dysfunction junction, right, where everybody sort of meets up and has all of these problems. Weiss and Aika and Fina, they have to deal with all sorts of troubles during the story of this game, but they weather the storm, and there's something incredibly intoxicating and powerful and alluring about that. Here we have our first dialogue prompt. Depending on what you say, you gain or lose reputation, and that affects sort of the title that you will be called. Like, eventually you'll be called things like Weiss the Daring or whatever, but it's partially based upon how often you fight or run away in battle, but it's also based upon your responses in the game. The more magnanimous you are, the more audacity that you show. Basically, the more heroic and kind you are, the more your reputation increases. So we're going to say that Fina has a great name. And there's a little chime there. I don't know if you heard it, but that indicates that you made a good choice. And also, here's another thing that's really nice, and we'll talk about it really quick. You'll think, okay, so these are our three protagonists, and you think that maybe there's going to be some sort of love triangle set up, but there's not. This is a game about friendship, right? And there's some romantic feelings that sort of exist between all three of these individuals, but it's never a thing where it's like, oh man, who am I going to get for my gold saucer date? Is it going to be Tifa? I hope it's maybe it'll be Eris. It's not like that. These characters they coexist and they build such a strong friendship that, like, that stuff, whatever, that extra stuff is pushed to the background. It's all about friendship and heroism, and it doesn't have a lot of the extra busy work that some JRPGs tend to have. It's very honest. It's very sort of... It's like a child sat down and thought of a game concept and said, pirates in the sky fighting bad guys. And, it builds from there. It gets more complicated. But really, it's a pure, fun JRPG sort of anime adventure. Which is why I so deeply lament the fact that it... Not that it hasn't seen a sequel, that it hasn't even seen, maybe a re-release on this day and age, or at least, it hasn't been released on Steam or the PSN or something, right? So you can get Sonic Adventure almost anywhere. And Sonic Adventure, along with Skies and Shenmue and a couple of other games, were really the games that defined the Dreamcast as this sort of cult classic console. But this is a game that you barely see much lip service paid to. Weiss shows up in Sonic and All-Star Racing Transformed, or whatever the heck that racing game is called. There's the Skies of Arcadia level in it. And characters modeled after Weiss and Aika show up in Valkyria Chronicles. But that's about the most we get. Otherwise, this game has sort of just been left in the past. We had the re-release on the GameCube, but that was in 2004 even. That wasn't that long after this game had already been released initially. I'm probably getting my dates messed up there. But still, it's been long enough. There could be a sequel. There could be some sort of re-release. There are a lot of games for the Dreamcast in particular that I think people should experience, because Sega at this moment in time really was on top of their game. Their games were exciting and full of energy and life, and that's one of the things that makes the Dreamcast a console that people really love so much. Besides the fact that it was also ahead of its time when it came to things like online integration and things like that, but that's a whole different discussion. So this is our overworld map. Isn't that so fucking cool? I'm flying a ship. It's not like walking through a forest or anything. This is the overworld map. You have a ship and you fly around. And it has all these, all that three-dimensionality to it is really exciting. And then also, you'll see that my compass is going crazy. If I select, I have found the Pirate's Grave. And it gives me a little blurb about this location that I've found. And So what happens is, in the overworld, you can find discoveries. There's like hundreds of them. The GameCube version added even more. They can be above the cloud line, below the cloud line, in the middle. They're all over the place. Some of them travel, so you have to be at the right spot at the right time to find them. But this game is really about exploration, and that's one of the big things about this game. It's about exploring the world, and this notion of going to new places and meeting new people, and sort of all of this really exciting it's just thinking about it makes me sort of speechless. This exciting notion of sort of going around, and the game world is this thing to explore and really enjoy and just have fun with. Those are loopers. They run away all the time. If you kill them, though, you get a pretty decent amount of experience. But yeah, the open world, and I say open world, by which I mostly just mean the game world, the overworld map, also stresses this idea of exploration and excitement and adventure. It's so wonderful. I love everything about it. And here we go. We're going back to our home base, Pirate Isle, because of course, in a game like this, we wouldn't have it called, by some sort of fake name. Where do pirates go when they need to go home? Well, they go to Pirate Isle. There's no need to really obfuscate it or give it like a name and then be like, hey, by the way, this is Pirate Isle. No, like, this is where the pirates live. I love Fina's dress, by the way. Absolutely, absolutely love it. Character design in this game is really strong. The outfits are really cool. Fina's dress is awesome. And even here, Vise's, we've talked a little bit, but I mean, like, just the bright colors there, like it'd be easy to have the blue and the red be fairly muted, but they're not. It's very bright. This game has a lot of color and a lot of things that draw your attention to the characters. Fina has those beautiful earrings and bright green eyes, and Vise sort of has his goggle and his scar, and everybody has these distinguishing features on them that really make them feel like exciting characters. So even here, we're going to see townspeople, and they have bright colored clothing and sort of really expressive faces, and this is just a game world that you want to spend time in. I want to go on to Pirate Isle and talk to all of these people. And the game world just gets even bigger from there. Like, this is just one small quadrant, and then you explore so much of it. It's really something else. This game, the combat, pretty straightforward, but feels fine. The story is fairly cliche, but really pulls it off well. The game world is just whimsical and wonderful, and I cannot stress how hard it has been for me to find this sense of authenticity and sort of self-awareness in other games. I think this game is so self-aware, not like on a meta level, but just in terms of it knows what it is. It knows what it wants to be. I've said when I was looking at Far Cry 4, I said that Far Cry 4 is a game that's comfortable being a game. And that's true, but Far Cry 4 still wants to be a game that says things every now and then. Skies of Arcadia just wants to be a game. It wants to be an experience. And I think at times, critically, we're so caught up in looking at games and what the subtext is and sort of what the ludic things are doing, that we forget that sometimes games are just about finding new worlds and exploring them and really just being transported to places the same way that a good book can transport us to places. And Skies of Arcadia is one of those games. It transports you to a wonderful world full of heroes and dastardly villains and a sweeping epic story. And sometimes that's all you need. You don't need a gameplay gimmick. You don't need a deep, incisive sort of subversive thing going on with your story. Sometimes it can just be about, two heroes meet a mysterious girl. They go on a quest to get magical crystals from around the world to stop the evil empire. And that's what most of this game will be for a long time, and then the end starts to make it a little bit more complicated, but really this game is so honest and wonderful. And I think sometimes this day and age we get cynical about games, and we forget that they can really just be about transporting the player, making them feel these wonderful, amazing feelings of emotion, or drawing them in and really having them feel like they're part of a world, right? There are games nowadays that sort of do that, right? Dragon Age Inquisition is a phenomenal game, and it really draws you in, and you want to spend time in that world, but it doesn't have the same sense of, I think, earnestness that something like Skies of Arcadia does. So if we really want to talk about games that really just draw a player in and don't belittle the player or deceive the player and have no pretensions, Skies of Arcadia is probably the purest example of that. So that was it. I hope you enjoyed it. I absolutely adore this game, and I hope I was able to somehow articulate to some degree why I think this game is important to look at. If you're interested, like I said, leave a comment, like the video. Maybe we'll come back to Arcadia and explore it a little bit more. Maybe we'll turn this into its own separate series, and then we'll also go back and remember some other games. I like the idea of having something a little less formal, a little less critical, and a little bit more experiential. So thank you very much for watching. I love you very, very much. Bye.